This episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. Be sure and check them out and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. Over 15 years ago, when I started my private practice, I had to learn a lot, and most of it the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi, I'm Gordon Brewer, a licensed psychotherapist, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Join me in this journey of discovery as we have conversations with other leaders and professionals in both the mental and allied health fields. Join us as we explore both the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. And welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 281 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. I'm Gordon Brewer. Glad you've joined us. Glad you're with me on this journey and hope you'll take time to follow the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. Looking forward to you hearing from today's guest, or this episode's guest rather, and that's Adrien Paczosa. And Adrien is a registered dietitian, and so we talk a good bit about the similarities between the dietitian world and the mental health world, but also we talk a good bit about, making referrals to dietitians. I think one of the things that is not only good from a marketing standpoint, but also just a patient care standpoint is being able to coordinate care well. And I know that even for those of us that are in the, in the insurance-based realm, or those of us that are accepting insurance, I know a lot of insurance companies are pushing for you to coordinate care with doctors and the other ancillary providers just to make sure that people are getting the best help that they can. And so that's what this conversation is about with Adrien. And so I'm looking forward to you hearing from her and just us talking about all these great things. So before we get to my conversation with Adrien, I'd love for you to go over to our website, practiceoftherapy.com, and just check out all the things that we have there. Constantly adding new stuff to the website and just really trying to make it a place where people can find the resources they need to build their practice, start their practice, grow their practice, scale their practice, however you want to put that. One of the things that has been just more of an emphasis for me this year is really the importance of building community. And I've got really 3 different communities available on the Practice of Therapy. One is just the general community, just called the Practice of Therapy community. And it's very much like a Facebook group, but it's not on Facebook or any kind of social media. I've got more control over it on the Circle platform. But if you just go to practiceoftherapy.com/communities, you can sign up to be part of that community at no cost. And that's what that community is about. It's just a way for people to kind of network online and to be able to ask their questions and get help from others of different aspects of being in private practice. The other 2 communities that I have are the Practice Launch Club, and that is specifically for those clinicians that are just in the beginning stages of starting their private practices. And we meet twice a month via Zoom, and you can join in those conversations. And we also have a teachable platform set up that has various lessons on different aspects of starting a private practice. So you get that content as well. And then I think the big part of it is just the community, and we interact on on the Circle platform. The Circle platform is divided up into different spaces. So depending on which community a person is in, they have access to that particular space. And then the third thing that I've got going as far as community is just the focus group for group practice owners, and specifically those group practice owners that have smaller group practices that are also insurance-based. And we've got a really good group of folks there. And our cohort for the current cohort will be ending in June, I think the end of June, and the end of July, excuse me. And we'll be opening the doors for people to start the next cohort if you're interested. And you can, again, if you'll go to practiceoftherapy.com and just look on there, and you can find a place to apply to the focus group. So the group practice focus group. So I just commend those things to you. So before we move into my conversation with Adrien, I'd love for you to hear more about TherapyNotes. They are the sponsor of this podcast, and also hear from one of the members of the Psychcraft Network.
Hey there, Daniel Fava here, and if you don't know me, I'm the host of the Private Practice Elevation podcast, where I share online marketing strategies and interviews to help private practice owners attract more clients and scale their businesses. The Private Practice Elevation podcast is part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts, and I'm super excited to be a part of this network alongside Gordon and the great work he's doing. If you haven't discovered the Private Practice Elevation podcast yet, you can find it wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'd love for you to join me as we explore topics like building an effective website for your private practice, search engine optimization, content marketing, and copywriting, as well as my conversations with experienced private practice owners about scaling a practice, outsourcing, team leadership, and all things that will help you elevate your business and create the life you love. Be sure to check us out at privatepracticeelevation.com for resources and content to help you in your online marketing journey.
One of the keys to a successful private practice is having the right systems and processes in place to make things run as smoothly as possible. With a system like TherapyNotes, you'll have more time to spend with what matters most, your clients. TherapyNotes is a complete practice management system with everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, meet with patients remotely, create rich documentation, and bill insurance right at your fingertips. Their streamlined software is accessible wherever and whenever you need it. Your clinical records will be secure with less paperwork, which means you can give a much better quality of care. It's the EHR that Gordon uses in his practice. Be sure to check them out today by going to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes, and be sure to use the promo code GORDON to get 2 months free.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm looking forward to you meeting today Adrien Paczosa. Hey, Adrien, glad you're here.
Hey, I am so excited to be here.
Yes. And the little bit we've been chatting here before we started recording, I think Adrien's going to give you all a lot of great knowledge, and just really thinking about, she's been in the dietitian kind of world doing private practice, and really just thinking about how we can integrate the two, mental health and nutrition, which, as we all know, go really hand in hand. But Adrien, as a start with everyone, why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed?
Sure. Oh, well, for everybody out there that doesn't know what a dietitian is, it's okay. We're the ones that love to talk about food. So that's okay if you don't know. I hope by the end of this podcast, you'll want to go and find a dietitian yourself. But as far as my entrepreneurial journey, I've done it all. So started as a solopreneur and was going to change the world and see all the patients, and slowly, organically grew into a group practice. And then over about a past year, was approached by a technology company and partnered with a technology company and was able to take the practice nationally. So we are now over 100 practitioners in 48 states. So From me and trying to figure it out on my own to building a group practice to being a national company, I got it all. I know I have made every mistake.
Awesome. Yeah, as people hear from me a lot, I tell folks that I've been doing it a while, but I've learned a whole lot the hard way.
Yes. But it also it makes it more real. And you're like, I will never do that again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, tell folks a little bit more about just kind of your journey as a dietitian and the practice piece. And I know how it's kind of evolved into this new venture with Nourish is the name of the company. And I was looking at your website, and I think it's going to be a great resource for people, particularly making referrals to dietitians.
Yeah. So how nutrition and mental health work together? I think, of course, the easiest is eating disorders. And that's my background and passion is eating disorders. And that one makes sense. I'm like, okay, if somebody is struggling with eating disorder, disordered eating, it makes sense to have a dietitian on the team. The other piece where a lot of times when I'm working with mental health providers, they're like, oh, I never thought of that, is with depression and anxiety. So all of our neurotransmitters, so serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, start with food. And so if your patient isn't eating adequately, we're not able to make all of that. So fun little fact, serotonin actually comes from carbohydrates. And it's digested in our stomach, and our gut microbiome, which we're starting to hear a lot about, is a huge player in serotonin production. And so just starting to think about how food affects mental health is huge. And so I always tell therapists, it doesn't hurt to ask like, hey, what'd you have to eat before you came and saw me? And if they're like, nothing, I haven't eaten today. I'm like, ugh, today's therapy session is gonna be rough.
Yeah. I think most of us are really kind of learning more and more, particularly with just thinking on the clinical side of things about the importance and the efficacy of like somatic therapy and just how the whole mind-body connection and that sort of thing.
Yeah. It just kind of, when you start to take a step back from it, you're like, oh, well, that makes sense. We're all connected. Everything is connected and it works together. And so if we understand that sleep is a puzzle piece, and so if somebody's not sleeping, it's easy to understand that. But when we kind of think about nutrition, I'm like, oh, if somebody isn't eating a balanced meal, oh, no wonder they might be struggling with anxiety, depression. Yeah, it starts to make one of those puzzle pieces connect. Like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So, well, to change gears a little bit, you've been in the business a while and have really kind of maybe it's fair to say moved up the ranks, but you've done a lot of things within the dietitian world. Tell us a little bit about what you learned just kind of on the business sides of things about running a practice and all of that sort of thing.
Oh, how much time do we have? Because there's so much that I've learned.
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway of the things that I wish I would have done sooner is get a mentor, find a mastermind. That when I joined a mastermind group, that's when I saw my business go 180. I started to really understand the business sides of, okay, what do I need to be looking at profit and losses? How do I start to fix this from a financial side? What do I need to do to get to the next level? And it would push me in ways that I'd never thought of before. And, as the owner, you get to ask yourself questions and have like CEO talks like, well, do you think this is a good idea? I think so. As opposed to when you have a business coach or a mentor, you can start to bounce ideas off of somebody. So if I had to do it again, those would be things I wish I would have done way sooner. And then also delegate, hire out. Gosh, don't do anything you don't know how to do.
Right. Yeah, that's ditto to every bit of that. But I know this, and the folks that I've worked with over the last several years, those are the same struggles, different, maybe a little bit different focus. I mean, we're both both kind of in the allied health fields. And same kind of thing. I think anytime we, particularly if you're in solo practice, it gets really lonely. And even as a group practice owner, it can be kind of lonely at the top, so to speak. Finding those peers and those people that can help you and support you in the journey. Same experience. It just, my practice grows exponentially, or has grown exponentially, whenever I've gotten some coaching, some mentorship, and being part of masterminds.
It's so invaluable, and it's amazing just all the other ideas people have, because they're not in it every single day that you are. And so they can suggest ideas and like, hey, have you seen this blind spot? And you're like, I didn't see that. So it's just been nice. I think another thing I learned the hard way is I needed to market all the time. And I think that's different in possibly the mental health world, is hopefully patients are with you for a good amount of time. Our clients in nutrition world, once somebody's gut health is better, they're done, and we send them on their merry little way. And so for us, our patient span is majority 6 to 8 months. And so always making sure we have enough patients coming in. And so I used to always joke that truly my job was marketing, and then it was running a business, and then it was seeing patients.
Yeah, that's fair. And it's not too far of a difference in the mental health world either. I mean, you've got to have, even though people's length of stay with us might be longer depending on your method or your approach or whatever, but you got to have those constant referral sources from whatever, and probably a lot of different referral sources is important too.
Oh, such a huge piece. And I think that's what I've loved about always collaborating with therapists is I know how to fix the nutrition side. I don't know how to fix the mental health side. And so a lot of times when somebody is struggling with nutrition, once we kind of fix that, then all of the mental health stuff will pop up and like, I have no idea how to fix happy, sad, mad, glad. Have you thought about a therapist? Or, oh, you really don't like who you are. I don't know what to do with that. Like, let's go find a therapist. So there is a huge correlation that comes up in nutrition land that we refer out so much to mental health.
Yeah. So other than the obvious kinds of things that maybe we think about with, certainly like you mentioned earlier, somebody that, meets the criteria for an eating disorder, that kind of thing would certainly make sense to refer to a dietitian. What are some other cases that we might run into where it might be a good idea to do that?
Yeah. Substance use disorder, same type. Just in my experience when working with those patients or at treatment centers, they have not been eating. And I think the last statistic I saw, 60% of patients with substance use disorder have an underlying eating disorder as well. So that's an easy one. And then I think it's just up to how the patient is feeling. If there is any body dysmorphia, if there is any body image issues, what are they doing it with their food that they're trying to, air quote it, control their body in a nutrition realm? Are they over exercising? Are they abusing exercising, using it as a form of compensation? And then looking at a lot of our severely depressed patients, do they have any genetic mutations, the MFTHR genetic mutation? Would it help to add in a methylated folate? What's going on in their diet? So really looking at kind of the whole entire person and seeing, could nutrition help? It can't hurt. Can we add in some nutrition?
Yeah. So I bet a lot of folks are thinking about, okay, if I notice these things, where do I start with making a referral?
Yeah. I think, always asking permission from the patient, like, hey, have you thought about this? Because you and I both know if you make a referral, then the patient will be like, no, that sounds silly. And it sounds scary to go and see a dietitian because we get the bad rap of being the food police, and we're going to tell you never to eat a cookie, or that's what people believe. But I think that's just the misinformation. And so helping a patient understand. And I would say, if you are interested yourself, see a dietitian. Come to Nourish. We're in 48 states. Would be happy to see you. We accept insurance. So there's no cost to most patients. And so it really makes the barrier and access pretty easy. So what we will do in a session is we get to know that patient. What is it like, their lived experience? What do they enjoy? What do they love? If you love cookies, awesome. We will make sure you never go a day without a cookie. We want to make sure that we're building a good, solid foundation and slowly finding ways for you to enjoy food that supports your physical and your mental health. So that's truly what it's like to work with a dietitian. And with patients that are struggling with depression or anxiety, we want to look at, well, how is our nutrient timing? So if we're going more than 3 to 4 hours without nutrition or food, that has a huge impact on our blood sugar, which impacts our brain chemistry. If we're not getting enough water, our cognitive reasoning abilities go down by like 70%. So we really want to make sure that just some basic stuff is being addressed.
Yeah. And I know one of the things that you had, at least I saw on your information sheet, I think a lot of people, there's so much of the diet culture that's out here right now, and just helping people navigate that. You want to say something about those things?
Yeah. It's so funny you bring that up. I was actually at a provider's office the other day and just meeting some providers that refer to us. And it was just funny because they're like, okay, what do you think about keto? What do you think about athletic greens? What do you think about this? Because we're inundated with nutrition marketing and through social media, through media all the time. And people don't know, is this a good idea? What should I be doing this? And because nutrition is so individualized. And so there will always be the diet industry. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so it'll always be there. And it's hard because 95% of the time it's just a whole bunch of hooey. And it really affects people's mental health. We see that in the research of how Instagram finally is getting rid of some of the stuff around eating disorders and stuff on Instagram. But it's there. It really affects people's overall thoughts and approach to food. But the diet industry is crap.
Okay. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because I recently started listening to another podcast that somebody had recommended to me, just thought I might be interested. It's called Maintenance Phase.
Yes, I love them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I've been kind of listening to them this week, and that's just been fascinating. Just a lot of the myths around different dieting things and fitness crazes and stuff. I was there. One of their most recent episodes was about this whole thing. And I've got a Fitbit, but the whole 10,000 steps thing, about how that's just kind of an arbitrary thing that really marketers came up with to try to promote their products. Yeah.
100%. Oh, you should listen to the one about the BMI. Oh, it's so good.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll put that on my queue next.
Yes. Yeah. That's a great one, because what I appreciate about it is they'll look at the research and debunk it. And that's the hard part, is research. You can make anything, or whoever pays for the research, make it look amazing and tout it as the new thing. And so that's what I love about dietitians, is we go back to biochemistry, like, okay, how does your body actually use food? And every body is different. And so let's try this out. And if we can get some lab work or tests, we can know even better how it will work for your body, as opposed to mass ideas or recommendations.
Right. Right. Yeah. And so when somebody typically works with a dietitian, what can they expect? I mean, we all have, at least in our field with mental health, we get to kind of know, okay, this is what a typical session looks like. This is kinds of things we work on. So what does it look like on the dietitian side, the nutritional side?
It's really great with mental health people. I say it's exactly like meeting with a mental health provider, but every time you talk about an emotion, substitute it for food. And so it is a lot of talking about nutrition, coming up with, well, let's try this. Next time you're in this situation, how about we try this? So we use a lot of the same skills of DBT or ACT, those type of things, CBT. So a lot of those same techniques, but with food.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So tell folks, I know we're jumping around a little bit here, Adrien, but tell folks a little bit about how you got into Nutrish and what that's all about.
Yeah. So about a year and a half ago, was plugging along, had a large group practice in Central Texas. We had in-person, virtual. We were just plugging along. I was doing great. And I got a random email. So that is one of my faults as being the owner, is I will answer every email that came into my inbox. And so if somebody wanted to learn about nutrition or wanted to learn about the nutrition industry, I would answer anything. And so I got approached, and the group wanted to know, oh, you seem to have a really great handle on the nutrition world. We'd love to learn more. And so set up a couple of phone calls because they were seeing that nutrition was going to be the next big wave, like mental health was for telehealth. And so I was like, okay, cool, I'll talk to anybody. And it was just great conversations. And they were like, oh, well, do you know anybody that would want to partner? And I was thinking of older providers in nutrition that want to sell their businesses and retire. And they're like, oh, well, how about you? And I was like, me? Little old me? Like, what? It never even crossed my mind of taking the business larger. And I just thought it was such a shock. I was like, well, I guess I don't know what that means, but sure. And so what that turned into in the past year and a half is we went from about 15 providers, and we're now over 100 providers. And it takes an army. So we have a lot of support team. We have technology and engineers, and it's just been absolutely wonderful because my mission and vision has always been create better access to care. And that's why we've always accepted insurance, why we've always wanted to find a easier way for patients to come and see us. And so my little mission and vision heart is just like bursting with joy because we've continued to live those values of how can we create better access to care, inclusive care, really coming at it from a non-diet, inclusive approach. So it really hopefully will cut down that stigma and barriers to care.
Right. I love that. Yeah. So another question that just kind of came to mind for me, and just thinking about the platform that you've created and working with, it's kind of almost like, dare I say, like BetterHelp, but for the nutritional world.
Yeah, exactly. Like Talkspace, or I forget there's so many in the mental health world. Yeah, we're trying to kind of do that for dietitians that have like the humans behind it and really working on that side. So 100%. And it's so interesting is I can't even tell you guys how many times in our dietitian community, like, oh, do you guys know a therapist that specializes in depression in Washington? Does anybody know a therapist in Arizona? And so because we don't know all of y'all yet, like that is a huge continued ask of all of our providers is we need to know everybody.
Right. Well, if somebody is looking for a dietitian, what would they want to look for? I mean, think about, somebody finding a therapist that's a good fit. How would they know a dietitian's a good fit?
About the same thing. So of course you want to make sure it's a registered dietitian. So having that RD, and then each state, some states do have licensures, other states don't. So depending on the state that you are, some of the dietitians will be licensed or not. And then depending on what might be going on. So some dietitians do specialize in eating disorders and might have more certifications. Some might specialize in diabetes and be a diabetes educator. So if you have something very specific, you would want to look for that. But then also with a therapist, like you want to test them out, see if your personalities match. And so I think that's also part of the process that we definitely support at Nourish is we want to make sure that this is a good working relationship.
Yes. Are there any restrictions about licensure or crossing state lines, that kind of thing? I know that's been a big issue, particularly with, now that hopefully we can say we're out of COVID, but, it's still around. But I mean, when we all switched to telehealth,
Mhm.
that was one of the concerns is that for most people in the mental health field, you're really not supposed to see or work with
Yeah.
somebody that's outside the state you're licensed in.
Yeah. Great question. So, dietitian license is not, how do I want to say this? Some states are stricter than others. So, to give you an example, California doesn't license their dietitians. So, that means any dietitian in the country can see patients in California. In Texas, we do have a licensure law. And so anybody that sees somebody in Texas has to be licensed. So it's different from state to state. And so what we do at Nourish is we want the dietitian wherever they live, they'll have their license. So if somebody's coming in from Iowa is a licensed state, we want to match that patient up with that provider that's licensed in that same state. And we are working on getting our dietitians licensed in all those states. It takes time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, this is fascinating stuff. Tell folks how they can get in touch with you and find out more if they're interested in all of this.
Yeah. Well, just head over to our website. It's usenourish.com or on all the social channels at Use Nourish. And if you want to learn more about how we can refer to you, because we need therapists, please don't hesitate to reach out and just shoot me an email, Adrien at Use Nourish. I would love to connect with you guys any way we can, because I think collaborative care is just so key to really having patient success.
Right. Absolutely. It's the coordination of care piece has become much more important.
Exactly.
Yeah, it sure is. I'm so glad we got to meet, and I'm glad you were part of this journey with us.
Well, thank you. This has been so much fun.
Well, again, a big thanks to Adrien for being with me on the podcast. As you can tell, she really had a lot of energy around what she does. And really, I think she gives us a lot to think about how we can do a better job of coordinating care. And as we all know, our diets are a big part of our mental health. I know that when I'm not eating well, my mood isn't as good either. So anyway, I think there's a lot for us to learn from each other across these different fields. There's a lot that is the same. Few things are different, but for the most part, we can help each other out. And I love just collaborating in those kinds of ways. So be sure and check out her things. Again, you can find the links here in the show notes and the show summary. And also, before we go, love for you to check out all the resources and communities that we have on the practice of therapy. So just go to practiceoftherapy.com and you can check us out. And you can get a lot of free stuff. You can also get the private practice startup guide. And anytime you sign up for any of the free things, you'll get added to our email list, and you'll be able to get just weekly updates and I do kind of a weekly newsletter, or as I like to call it, email blast, that just kind of features the particular podcast episode for that week, but also just hearing from a lot of other folks in this field. I know in the past few weeks, I've had opportunities for people to get CEs through people that I collaborate with, like David Hall over at Psych Maven. So quick shout out to David here at the end of this episode. But so always putting out new stuff. And one of the best ways to find out about it is just by subscribing to my email list. And the way to do that is just go to practiceoftherapy.com and get the free private practice startup guide, and that'll put you on the email list. So be sure and check that out. And also, big thanks to our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes. They are the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers. They're who I use in my practice and absolutely love the platform. And they are constantly updating things and putting out new things. They now have several different assessments available through their platform that you can give to clients just to help you out with your clinical work. And so be sure to check them out. And when you do, go to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes and use the promo code just Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. So be sure and check them out. Again, thanks folks for joining me for this particular episode. Do take time to follow us or subscribe to the podcast, however it's listed on your podcatcher, and that way other people can find out about us and just kind of helps the SEO of the podcast. And also leave us a review. I love getting honest feedback about what you're hearing and what you find helpful about things. And you can always reach out to me with questions at gordon@practiceoftherapy.com. So take care, folks, and we'll be in your ears again next week. You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the PsychCraft network of podcasts. You can find out more about the other great podcasts in the network by visiting psychcraftnetwork.com. And if you haven't done so already, please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com and get your free private practice startup guide, along with a lot of other great resources and webinars and free things just by visiting. Also, be sure to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. This podcast is intended to be educational in purpose and is not intended to give legal, accounting, or counseling advice. If you need a professional, find the right person for that.